Okay, I'm Terry Swartz-Russell, the Director of Family and Adult Education at Temple Emmanuel. I know most of you, so welcome, and all of my other names that are here as well. We're in for a big treat. We're going to spend the morning watching, if you haven't watched the film, From Cairo to the Cloud. And then we're going to have a real big treat because the end of the title, The Cloud, is going to be explained to us by Dr. Alan Verskin, who is here. Do you want to say anything, Alan, or just wave to everybody?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to say just a couple things.
Perfect.
First, about the documentary itself, and I think this is something Terry mentioned earlier, that there is such a wide cast of characters interested in the Cairo Geniza. It's not just Ashkenazi American academics. We have a British Indian novelist. We have Arab Israelis who are interested in. There's a huge range of characters, and they're interested in it from different perspectives. Some of them are scholars, some of them are novelists. We have a documentary film producer and so on. So I think that excitement and the other comes across, and the other excitement is that these people actually like each other. Scholars tend to be cranky and loners. I'm sorry to say that, as I'm a scholar myself, but Geniza scholars aren't like that. And the excitement and the sense that this is a communal endeavor and everyone's working towards a collective project is really evident in the documentary. And the other thing I wanted to add is that afterwards, I'm going to be talking about how you can do Geniza research from the comfort of your own home. Because part of making this a communal endeavor is using crowdsourcing to decipher Geniza documents. So really, everyone can do this, and I'm going to show you how afterwards to emphasize that cloud part. And Great. Lastly, I just wanted to really thank Terry and Lois for inviting me. I love talking about the Geniza. It's one of my big passions. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Thank you very much. I will give Alan a formal introduction after the movie when we jump into his presentation and our discussion. A couple of housekeeping details. This film was brought to my attention by Lois Cohen, who's on our screen, one of our screens. And Lois was studying with Alan, taking Maya, the medieval piece of Maya, and this was discussed, and she sent me an email and said, can we bring this to Temple Emmanuel? And I am a big Geniza groupie, I guess I'd call it. And by the end of this film, you will be too. So just a couple of things. Keep your screen on mute. If we are recording the discussion at the end. If you don't want to be seen, you can turn off your video. I want to thank Caitlin Bellina, who's with us from Temple Emmanuel's staff, who's going to be doing all the background stuff. The movie is going to end around 11:37 exactly. You will be brought back for the discussion. You don't have to do anything. Just keep your screen on and enjoy the film, and take it away, Caitlin. And we are back. Welcome, everybody. Take a deep breath. You saw a lot, you learned a lot, and got a lot of information. I was blown away by this whole movie, but we'll hear your input in a little bit. I just want to introduce our speaker, who's going to take us to the next stage of where the Geniza is today, and that's Professor Alan Verskin. He's an associate professor of history at the University of Rhode Island, and has held fellowships at Columbia University, University of Pennsylvania, and Macalester College. He holds a PhD in Near Eastern Studies from Princeton University, MA from University of Chicago Divinity School. His academic work ranges in topic from medieval Spain to 19th century Yemen, and from Islamic law to Jewish philosophy. He's an avid translator of Arabic, Judeo-Arabic, and Hebrew. Alan is also an instructor in the Maya program at Hebrew College, which is where Lois Cohen, thank you, Lois, found him. And I'm going to pass it over to Alan. And I will, before I do that, I will just tell you briefly that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them after Alan's brief presentation. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. And thank you so much to Terry and to Lois for inviting me. What I wanted to do was focus on the cloud part of the Geniza for this section. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I think that what makes Geniza, the study of the Geniza, so special now is that it's collaborative. And that Geniza scholars are not just saying we're going to be nice to each other, to other scholars. They really want to involve the public in what they're doing. And I want to show some of the ways that they're doing it. And the first thing I'm going to show is this program called Scribes of the Cairo Geniza. It's a project of the University of Pennsylvania, which the Friedberg Ganesa project is also in on. And the purpose of this project is crowdsourcing, is to use crowdsourcing to decode the Ganesa. So there are 500,000 Ganesa fragments. That's a lot of fragments. And the first stage of cataloging all of these fragments is figuring out what they are. And as you know from the movie, they can be spread throughout the world. Some of them are in England, some of them are in Europe, some of them are in the United States, some of them are in private collections. I've seen many in private collections. The first step is figuring out what things really are. And this is what this project does. So maybe I'll do this myself rather than calling out for response. But the first question they're asking is, what kind of script is this document in? And if you look carefully, it's in Hebrew script. We can go very much closer if we want to. They're at very high resolution scans. The options are Hebrew, Arabic, or both. And there also needs some help with this task, which I really like. So it gives examples over here of what different kinds of Hebrew scripts look like, and what different kinds of Arabic scripts look like. So you can sort of use this as a cheat sheet to see to help you through this. So I'm going to say this is in Hebrew because it's written in Hebrew, and I'm going to go on to next. The next question that they have is this a formal Hebrew script, or is this an informal Hebrew script? And what they're trying to figure out there is this from a book like a Siddur or a version of the Torah or a law book that was put into the Geniza, or is this some merchant's letter writing to someone else? And they'll give you, again, some help with this task. They're formal scripts, and they're informal scripts. There's scripts that look like chicken scratch, look like my handwriting, and there's some that look like a real scribe has gone in there and made out the letters. And there are different kinds of formal script. And I'm going to go with this being in a formal script. It looks pretty formal to me, not as formal as a Torah scroll itself, but still pretty formal. And then they are asking other questions. Is there evidence of binding? And yes, there is. You can again get help with this task. Those are the kinds of things that you can look for binding. That's how people prepare a book so they can be bound easily and sewn together. And there are other things. Are there justified margins? And it shows you what a justified margin is. And then importantly, is there corner wear? Is there top corner wear? And that shows you a lot about what kind of a book is. Top corner wear in a book means that book is being used very regularly. The page is actually decaying on the top where people are constantly flipping it. So those are the questions that a computer can't easily figure out, but a human eye can. So I'm going to say, yes, there's evidence of binding. Absolutely, justified margins. We see that there. Top corner wear, maybe slightly on the corner. I mean, it's a borderline case. I'm going to click yes because I think that there's enough there. It's very light, but I think there's enough there to justify it. And then we go next. The next thing they want to know is, are there diacritics? Has this person put any vowels in? Because that will tell you a kind of a text. A text with vowels is usually one that contains part of the Bible. And I don't see any vowels. Whoops, sorry. I don't see any vowels here whatsoever in this text. It looks just like consonants to me. Are there any? Those are the diacritics. So I'm not going to click that because I don't see any. The use of a colon. Are there any colons? That again marks it as a Bible, and I didn't see a single colon here. So this is a formal text, but it's not a Bible. So I'm going to say I am done. And there I've helped with some basic categorization of the Geniza. Now, what's good about this is, say I made a mistake. This is crowdsourcing. So the computer is not going to regard my answer as correct until a number of people have gone through it and said the same things as me. So you are, it's a community, it's a group effort. You don't have to worry about making mistakes because other people will correct them. The second part of this project is actually transcribing the whole Geniza so that it can be a searchable document. You could search it on Google. And again, we're talking about 500,000 documents. There's no way that you'll get enough scholars to transcribe the whole Geniza. But gradually, if people on their downtime transcribe a few lines, the whole job will get done. And again, you can help this. And there's a crib sheet. So the crib sheet I like a lot because the scripts that they used back then are a little different from our ones today. So it can take a little time for your eye to get into it. So they tell you some of the different scripts. But basically, the idea here is you click next to the line you want to translate. So this one I can see very easily. I'm going to put it this line. I'm going to transcribe it, and it says Eloheinu Melech Haolam Ha'el Ha'av Harachaman Hamrachem. And I could type that out. I won't do it right now. I could type it out. And gradually, if I did enough of these, again, you don't have to worry about making mistakes because somebody else will go over it. And eventually, that way, the whole Geniza will become as searchable as Google. I don't know whether I should pause for, I'm going to, yes, close without saving. Okay. Okay, so there you have it. This is the Ganesa project. It's a project of the University of Pennsylvania. Should I pause? Are there any questions that have come in that I can just sort of easily answer? Yeah.
Not about this per se. There were questions about the movie.
Can I hold those for the movie?
Yep, you certainly can.
Okay. But if there are any about what I'm going over just now, I'm happy to answer them. This over here is the Friedberg Ganesa project. That's the one that they talked about. The story of the Friedberg Ganesa project is there was a billionaire who owned a bank, and he suddenly became interested in Maimonides, and he started doing a PhD while he was still directing his bank at the University of Toronto, and he became very interested in the Ganesa. So he put millions of dollars into it, and thanks to him, there's a whole new level of Ganesa research now that's possible. Scholars can, at the click of a button, bring up pretty much any Ganesa manuscript that exists. And I won't go over how the Ganesa project does it because I think that was already in the movie. There's fairly sophisticated software. There's jigsaw software where the computer itself is matching different parts of the Ganesa based on the shape of the tears. So it's very sophisticated, and it also looks at how different scribes write. But this gives you an idea of what some people are doing. So I've deliberately picked a manuscript where it requires a join. And you can see here that this manuscript is made out of 3 different documents, all in different parts of the Ganesa. These were all in Cambridge, but in all different collections. And the computer said, these shapes look like they match one another. And then individual scholars came and said, you know, that your computer, you're right. These pieces do fit together. The computer is not always right. That's why you need human beings to okay it. And this scholar, Amir Ashur, managed to put this together. And it's a marriage contract. It's a ketubah from the Karaite community in Jerusalem. And in this particular case, we can actually go back and the Ganesa. Ooh, I closed the wrong thing. The the computer will actually link to a book where a scholar has translated that ketubah, so we can see the details of what was specified there. And the great thing about marriage contracts in the Geniza is that they're very personal, that people list the property they're bringing into the marriage. They list their expectations of what they hope the marriage is going to be. They sometimes talk about the dissolution of the marriage. But it's a much more personal document than ketubahs are today, where pretty much you have the blueprint and people sign off. There you get a lot more direct impression about what each party to the ketubah wanted. So that's the Geniza project. And if you go back to the home of the Geniza project, you can see how many libraries here have digitized their collections and how spread out the Geniza was before this project. We have Ann Arbor, we have Basel, Berlin, another collection in Berlin, Cambridge, Cincinnati, Dublin, and it goes on and on there. Jerusalem, this would have been before computers. Most of these collections would simply have been inaccessible. People wouldn't have known about them. But thanks to the Geniza project, these are all you can access them all here. Okay.
Thank you.
Am I
going? Keep going. One more.
Okay.
You're good.
So and you can the Ganesa project is open. You just have to tell them that you want to look at the Friedberg. You want a membership in the Friedberg, and they'll give it to you if you have a good reason for wanting to it. And curiosity is a good enough reason. This collection over here is the Manchester Library collection. And what I really like about this is it categorizes manuscripts based on topic. And they have about 300 texts which are written by children. And you saw one in the documentary, the kid saying, speech is silver, silence is golden type of thing. And here's a medieval child writing out the alphabet in a particular order that the teacher wanted, not the regular alphabetical order. I don't know why, but the child had to copy it all those times, and isn't that amazing, really, that we can get so close to a medieval child as this. So this is the I can send out these links if people are interested in this. These are all writing exercises, and if you go to this Manchester Library, it categorizes the manuscripts in a sort of and you by time, by place, by topic. You can see all writings about amulets. You can see writings about the calendar. You can see copies of Maimonides' own manuscripts, and so on and so forth. It sort of makes them very easily accessible. One more thing, the fragment of the month, and I think I'm going to send out a link if that's okay with Terry to all.
Yeah, please do. People have asked
to follow this up. Cambridge has a Ganesa fragment of the month. So something cool that a researcher has found each month. And we have a ton of things. We have Muslim and Christian calendars that turned up in the Ganesa. We have the stories about a female slave and her personal journey and struggles, which turn up in a series of letters and Ganesa documents. We have letters to Maimonides. We have trouble with adultery in the Cairo Geniza biblical manuscripts. A whole variety of just interesting little anecdotes that pop up and people want to share. So this is something that I check pretty much every month. It's a little bit hit and miss, but a lot of them are really fascinating stories. Last thing, again, to make sure that this documentary isn't the last thing you read about or exposure you get to the Ganesa, some books. This is in an Antique Land by Amitav Ghosh, the British Indian novelist who you saw in the documentary. And this is nonfiction. It's about Ghosh's experience doing field work in Upper Egypt as a graduate student in anthropology. And at the same time, he was trying to trace the journey of this Indian slave who was owned by a bunch of different Jews. Now, it's a different kind of slavery. This Indian slave was basically a businessman in his own right. and he traveled the whole Mediterranean making deals, but officially he was a slave. It's a different mode of slavery than we have, say, in the American South. But Ghosh talks about his experience with contemporary Egyptians, and he also talks about delving into these documents. And it's a fantastically written book. And if you like this novel, Ghosh has many other books, novels, which are also good. The last one is a new-ish one. It's by Burton Vysotsky, who's a professor of Midrash at the Jewish Theological Seminary. He's not a Geniza scholar, but he was really excited by all the material, and he decided to write a novel. And he writes this novel as a series of Geniza letters. And I think it's wonderful. I've always wanted to teach Geniza to high school students. I've never actually had the opportunity, but if I did, this would be the book that I would use, because it's incredibly historically accurate, and it brings across a lot of the excitement of these documents. Vysotsky is simply a brilliant teacher. He doesn't write novels normally, but he conveys that in this novel. So it's a great story, and it's also great to teach from. So I'm going to leave it there. I don't know how. I think that brings me to my allotted amount of time, and just open it for questions.
That would be great. If you can unshare your screen.
Unshare my screen, yes. Okay. Stop share. Here we go.
So thank you so much. I mean, that's just a window into another. I mean, this thing is never going to end. There's so much, every little piece. It's amazing. So a couple of questions people wanted to know was, what kind of paper were these things written on, all the little scraps? Why don't people who handle the scraps wear gloves? I think that was earlier, but I'll let you comment. So those are just two to start.
So the technical aspects, they're on everything. They're on parchment, they're on paper. There's paper made out of reeds. There's paper from China. There are paper scholars who are working on this, where they're just seeing how these different pieces of paper from various parts of the world made their way into the Geniza, because these are traders, and sometimes they're writing from India. So the question is, where does that paper come from? So they're really made on everything, and there are scholars who are simply working on the kind of the economic history of paper by looking at these documents. Why aren't they wearing gloves? Unfortunately, I don't know. What I was told when I've worked with manuscripts is that people no longer think that your fingers have so much oil that they can damage the manuscripts. So that's no longer the convention. When I go into an archive and I'm working with manuscripts, they expect that you wash your hands, but they don't usually make you wear gloves. But I don't know the technical reason for that.
A lot of the stuff was obviously, in books preserved behind whatever you want,
yes,
clear plastic, all that kind of stuff. In the movie, they showed a synagogue that they were showing, and somebody wanted to know what and where was the synagogue. I don't know if that was the one in Fustat or.
So that synagogue still exists. I've been to it. It has been pretty much gutted in the early 20th century. So it looks really like an Ashkenazi synagogue on the inside, which I've always thought was a little bit upsetting. But the building itself is several centuries old. And if you go upstairs, you can actually go and look into that Geniza room. So where's Fustat? Fustat is now a suburb of Cairo. It used to be its own separate city. It was a little over a mile away from Cairo, but now it's just, Cairo is massive, and all of those little towns have been eaten up by it.
Okay. Somebody wants to know how much more of Ben Zoma in Hebrew was found. How much?
Ben Sira.
Ben Sira, sorry.
Ben Sira, yes.
Yeah.
That is a question I don't know, because I don't work on sort of antiquity. I think the whole thing, but I actually don't know.
Okay, and somebody else said, I thought a Geniza was for text with God's name. Has that changed since there are other types of documents?
So that's an interesting question. So officially, the rule is that you can't destroy God's name, so you bury God's name. And there were some communities that, as an added stringency, said any document which is written in Hebrew text should be put in the Geniza, because what if you accidentally miss God's name on one of them and throw it out? So it's a question of this stringency, leading to this huge boon for historians, where thanks to that stringency, everyday letters, receipts, letters between husbands and wives all get preserved. So it's unusual, but not unattested to elsewhere. The other question, which I could add, is why is this the only Geniza anyone has really ever heard of? Why there's so few Genizas out there? Well, in the Middle East, I think the first answer is generally Genizas are buried. They're not in synagogues, and that preserves the documents less well. In the Middle East, there were other synagogues with Geniza rooms, but they had this ritual during prayers for rain, where people brought out the entire Geniza while they prayed for rain. And prayers for rain may not work immediately, but they eventually work, and then the Geniza gets soaked. So we do have a Geniza in Syria, but it's only about 150 years old, precisely because the custom of the community was to bring out the Geniza at these intervals.
Okay, and so I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that the Qumran caves could have been a kind of Geniza. What's your thought on that?
So that's one of the theories of why those documents got preserved. I don't know much about the Dead Sea Scrolls, but my understanding is that is the dominant theory, because the question is why are they all there?
I kind of thought that they were hiding so they wouldn't get destroyed from whatever nation was conquering them at the time. But
so one of the reasons that some people think that it's a Geniza is that those documents are not from a single group or a single sect, or at least that's one of the theories.
Right.
Okay. So it could be this kind of communal collection.
Great. People are asking for the information that you're going to send to me. I just want everybody to know that the plan is as follows. Alan will send me information that he thinks he wants to share with us that he mentioned earlier. And if you have any other information, I will then send that out with his email, if that's okay with you. So if people want to follow up. And we're also recording this. We're not recording the movie because we purchased it specifically to be shown. But I will send that out, the recording of our discussion and the introduction, et cetera, to everybody on our list. And so you will get all the information, and all those questions will be answered. I can tell you that I said to Alan before we started the program that I just briefly Googled Friedberg Ganesa project, and there were, I didn't even look at the list, but there was a long list of places you can go to get information. So, Rob Google knows all these days, right? So, okay. Does Alan speak or read Arabic? I think I said that. I have some old documents. So somebody wants to be in touch with you. So,
okay.
And Sue Goldberg said, we found the Geniza from the synagogue in the Azores.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew? Wow. Okay. And let's see if there's one more. No, everybody's just saying thank you. If there's any other questions, could we send out the names of the 2 books? Yes, we'll include that. There's also a few other, couple of fiction and nonfiction scholarly books that are valuable to read and fascinating as well. The movie just sort of pulls everything together. I think somebody wants to know if we can see the movie. I think the link is still live through today. So if you missed any part of it, I think you could still click on the link that was provided earlier, and you'll be able to view it. But after today, I think it's gone from us. However, I've decided that it was shown as part of the film festival from Brandeis, their film archive, but not through the Boston Jewish Film Festival. So I was going to put the director and the producer, Michelle Paymar, who is amazing, in touch with them. So, it'll be shown again and again and again, I'm sure. But you really have to, I'm hoping you're all now whatchamacallit, Geniza groupies. Yes, one of the books is called Sacred Trash. I love that name. So, okay. So I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Special thanks to Alan and to Lois again. And I just should mention, since this is what I do, this Thursday night, a totally different subject. You ready? The director of, or the co-director of the Brandeis Film Archives is going to be doing a presentation on Yiddish film, the development of Yiddish film over time. Her name is Sharon Revo, and she's amazing as well. So I tune in and join us, and there's lots of other stuff coming up. This afternoon, and then I'll shut up. This afternoon at 6:30, we are going to be exploring with the community Chevra Kadisha of Greater Boston the concept of tahara, preparing the body for burial, and how you get involved with the community Chevra Kadisha. So that's also another option. So we're doing lots of learning on lots of subjects, and we hope you'll keep learning with us. Have a wonderful day. Go outside and enjoy the sun. Thank you, and shalom.